When I had problems, if you told me to do a mental health program, I'd say you're crazy. I'm not doing any program. So people say, well, why is what you do so different? And I believe there are so many men wired like me.
You cannot be at your top potential if your brain is not right.
All the questions you're running from just come up. And all the things you're running from, you have to face it. The training is so intense that it becomes an emotional experience within the first few minutes. But the hardest change to make is in your identity. Whenever there's a natural disaster, watch the way humans interact. But in everyday life, we think, oh, we need barriers. You don't.
It's difficult to go back home and live everyday life and just pretend everything is fine.
It's a fundamental need of being human is the human touch and connection. If you're doing this with an action plan every day, within 3 months,
Does it mean that women are more resilient?
your thoughts and actions, they're the only two things you can control in life. The first step is to physical's tied into mental, social, spiritual, and emotional health. They're all tied together. The most traumatic things you'll go through with me won't be the most traumatic things you go through in life. But I'm preparing you as best I can. The world needs more people who know who they are.
Make an impact, make people suffer, give your best advice to people. I want them crying now. Hello everyone, today we have a special podcast episode with our friend from Australia, Nathan Helberg. He's the creator of a ZUU Fitness brand. It's considered to be the hardest bodyweight training in the world. Today's topic is how to improve your mental health by doing physical exercise. Let's get started. So Nathan, you're working on a special project and you've been doing it for the last 5 years. You're combining physical exercise and mental strength, and your target area is men between 30 and 55. So what type of work do you do? What's special about your work? What do you do? And how it helps people to work on their self-development, sort some mental issues, and how will it help people in the future if they know more? So could you tell more about it, please?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me, by the way. And it's good to be here. Look, a lot of people know me as the founder of ZUU, which is bodyweight training. ZUU is considered the hardest bodyweight training in the world, but it's important people understand sort of where ZUU comes from. I'm not from fitness. I'm from the trades in Australia. Australia is huge on trades, like a lot of countries. I went through a process, had lots of coping mechanisms. Maybe we can talk about that later. But I went through a period where I needed to find me as a man. I wasn't the man I should have been for my wife and young family, 3 daughters under 9 at the time. And I went to a park to smash myself, literally smash myself to find me. And after 2 years, the brand of ZUU came out. So even though people see me on YouTube and Instagram as the fitness guy, my real passion is helping men, that was me, between 30 and 55, who have lost their way. Now, I've been doing this for quite a few years, and there's lots of challenges, roadblocks, bottlenecks when you're dealing with tough men. And I presume it's the same. Is it the same over here in Lithuania?
Yes, it is the same.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the same wherever we go.
Yes.
So to help your audience understand, when I had problems, if you told me to do a mental health program, I'd say you're crazy. I'm not doing any program. If you told me to talk to someone, I don't talk to people. If you told me to get in touch with my emotions, I don't cry. That's not me as a man. And I believe there are so many men wired like me. So in Australia, we still have massive problems. I think 2 suicides every day inside the trades because men don't do mental health programs. They don't talk about their problems. They don't want to talk about their problems. So people say, well, why is what you do so different? What I do is different because I believe I reverse engineer a process. So first and foremost, I train with people. Now, if people who are listening go, well, it's just a workout. It's not a workout. I'm not there to get fit. I'm there to get in touch with who I am as a man. The fitness is just a byproduct. So when I train with these men, and you know what it's like training with me, Martis, it's not very intense, is it?
It is intense. It is.
It gets emotional, right?
Yes.
And that's what I want. I want to create an emotional experience. If you train and you don't train intensely, for people who are watching and listening, you miss out the most powerful aspect of what I teach. If you create an emotional environment, that's when for men wired like me, it all comes out. And then we just talk like brothers. Talk about the problems, and sometimes they don't need the answers. They just want to talk. but I create this environment. So physical, over here linked to mental and emotional. And there's no program, I haven't come across a program like it in Australia, let alone the world. Lots of people don't like me talking like this. Lots of people don't like my program but this is just me. This is how I sorted me out. There wasn't a program back in 2007 when I went on my journey. There wasn't a program back then like it, and there still isn't today. So that's why I spend a lot of my time with these men trying to help them.
But if you go back a second for the listeners to understand, by saying I smashed myself in a park, so could you clarify for the listeners, you was mentally down, you was tired from your trade, and you just needed a place to escape. So you find yourself a place in a park where you can be alone. So by saying smashed, did you train in a park or you did something else?
Absolutely. I trained in a park. So when you have tried to stop a coping mechanism, so my coping mechanism was alcohol. Like so many men, it could be drugs, gambling. There's so many different coping mechanisms to try and just survive and keep going. And when you have an unhealthy relationship for 2 decades and you try to quit and you fail again and again and again, it wires your brain for failure. So next time you say to yourself, that's it, I'm going to quit, your subconscious says, no, you're not. And so when I went to a park, I was there for the sole purpose I tell people this, to wage war with me. In other words, I needed to come face to face with the man I hated, who I was, with the man I still believed I could be. And I was in that park to do bodyweight training because I used to do the gym, but nothing hurt me as much as bodyweight training. So I just went there to just do bodyweight training alone, no music, by myself. Because when you train very intense with bodyweight training, all the questions you're running from just come up. And all the things you're running from, you have to face it. And that's why I was there. People say, oh, you got so fit, you lost body fat. I wasn't there for that. I was there to fight for me, I wasn't even there for my family. I was there just for me, because I knew if I sorted me out, everything would flourish. And so many men get it wrong. They put family first, but they're giving their families the worst version of themselves. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
So yeah, to answer your question, Martis, I was definitely there to do physical training and to create that emotional space for me.
But did you have a breaking point where you find yourself in a position where you need to make some changes in life and you managed to smash yourself in a park and at the same time do physical work, and that helped you to be better at your job, at your family, or that was after?
What do you mean breaking point?
Breaking point where you think, that's it, it's hard for me to cope with my everyday work. It's repetitive. Every day I'm doing the same. It's not enough money. I need to supply for my family, and you get stressed from your family. So it's like a big circle where everyone is going round and round. So that what I call breaking point, probably.
It sounds like it's the same over here as it is in Australia.
You mean, how do I know it?
Yeah, how do you? You should talk about this subject.
Okay.
So for me, it was every day was breaking point. Every day. If you have a coping mechanism, every day is I call it rinse and repeat. You wake up dark, go to work, get home dark, don't see the kids, feel guilty, disengage from family, working away, usually arguments with the wife, and then you get up the next day and it just happens again and again. And we call it rinse and repeat, or the vicious cycle. So for me, it all happened around GFC, which is the global financial crisis. And during that, I had 6-figure contracts I had a civil concreting construction company. We lost all our contracts. We ended up losing our owner-built home, investment properties. And it was that time period where I took myself to a park. And the other thing I really want to help people understand is, especially if you are here right now, like if you are living what I'm telling you, you can't overthink it. I didn't think about tomorrow. I didn't think about 7 days from now. I only just thought about today. Because I was so weak mentally, I couldn't think about tomorrow because it just broke me. So I just had to wake up and win today. So my job was physical. After work, I would go to a park and smash myself in a park. And sometimes, guys, I would be so emotional before I started training, I'd vomit. I would literally vomit before I started my workout because I was so scared, but I was there for a specific reason. And even after 3 months, and I didn't have rest days, people said, that's overtraining, Nathan, but I wasn't there to get fit. That's why I was there every day, to fight me. So even after 3 months, I was still too scared to think about, imagine if I can do this for another 3 months. It was just still every day, and I did that for 2 years. And that's why when people meet me, they're like, ZUU's different. But this is the story of where it all comes from. And when they meet me, they're like, you are ZUU. And it's like, well, yeah. This is just the journey of where it is. And every time, and you've done it with me so many times in different environments, it always has the same effect. It becomes emotional, people talk, people cry, people hug, and that's the culture and all those sorts of things.
One more question on the same topic, but in your opinion, because we all have problems, we all had issues in the past, so we have different coping mechanisms, and I'm exactly the same. If I want to get rid of my mental issues or if I have problems, I would go and train. But don't you think that sometimes when we train hard, we do a lot of physical work, we are not fixing the actual problem, but we are hiding because we get endorphins, we are happy again, and we get into repetitive mode where we get addiction and we have to train again to actually hide the things, what's wrong in your body, in your brain. So at the same time, I understand we have to do physical training work, but it's really good to go and see psychologists and to do it as a combination. What do you think?
I think that's a great alternative to do it that way, except I don't see psychologists and things like that. So I certainly believe there's an avenue for people to do that. So what I do, and I should probably point this out, is when I consult with construction companies and we train together, I get the men between 30 and 55. The first thing I start them on is core values. So the biggest change for anyone listening, and the biggest change or the hardest change to make is in your identity. You can change so many things around you, but the hardest to change is like habits, and beneath habits is identity. Who are you? So when I train with men and I strip all the barriers back in 5 minutes of training intensely, and it gets emotional very quick, I ask them straight away, like, who are you? And most men don't even know how to answer me that. So the next question I ask them is, what's the core values you stand for? And if they say, I stand for this core value and this core value, and the next thing I say is, okay, so write me an example of you carrying out that core value in everyday life. So I get really granular. I focus in to help them understand that these aren't just empty words. You have to embody these words. What's the expected behaviors? What's the behaviors you walk past? Because behaviors you walk past are behaviors you accept. So I love the reason I do physical work, again, not to get fit. So maybe when men train, they're training for a different reason. They're training to get fit and maybe let their emotions out. But if you don't work on yourself, well, tomorrow you're doing the exact same thing. You're right, it's like another coping mechanism. When I train, it's to find core values of what I stand for as a man, and then what's the behaviors that line up with those core values to slowly make me develop new routines and habits of becoming the man I need to be.
So how long does it take for people to realize that when we come to do, let's say, ZUU training, to realize that's not just a physical work, and you do a lot of hugging, you do a lot of clapping with hands, motivating each other. So how long it takes for people to realize that it's actually different? This is not what you expect. This is not just physical work. And how do you see it on their bodies, facial expressions, or like you said, people start crying and emotions?
Good question. It obviously depends where people are at in their life and what phase. Something could happen to them that day and they're just emotional that day. Normally it's body language. I'm very big on watching body language, facial expressions. The first time you do ZUU, it's different because there's so much culture, human connection, human touch inside ZUU, high-fiving. The training is so intense. It's still low impact, but it's so intense that it becomes an emotional experience within the first few minutes. If you're doing a 30-minute session and you're doing ZUU properly, I don't think there's anyone who doesn't say that ZUU is just different because it's so challenging, and you have to rely on people around you. As far as it going to another stage where people want to start working on themselves, that happens very, very quickly within the first few sessions. And that's when they can use ZUU for a different form. So you can use ZUU just to get fit. A lot of the athletes I work with, they use ZUU because they want to develop a new sort of fitness, dynamic mobility, and all the things that are the physical components of ZUU. But then there's other people that want that mental performance of ZUU, or they want that emotional control, emotional intelligence. They're two very big phrases, emotional intelligence and control. And they're not actually talked too much about in the world of performance, but I personally believe they're key. You know all about them, Martis.
Yes.
Martis is one of those rare coaches in the world that already knows these phrases.
Yes.
But yeah, so to answer your question again, those people I love to guide them and on their journey where they're at.
And when did you realize, when you found yourself training in the park, smashing yourself, that it actually helped you, and now I'll go and save the world. I'll help man, and I'll help others. I'm gonna travel. Awesome. I'll invite everyone, and I'll
invite the world.
Yes, and educate everyone to see how many benefits we can get. So when was that moment when you thought, okay, I can make it as a business? It can be a passion. I love it.
It's a good question, mate. I'm trying to think back. 2 years in a park, we lost everything. My wife and I lost everything. And when I mean I lost everything, I was mowing lawns and washing dishes to pay the bills, because in the financial crisis, we lost everything. So I realized I had started, the very first session I did, because I was training by myself, the very first session I did was with my brother and two mates. There was 4 of us. I just took my shirt off, threw our thongs and made like a square, and I smashed them. And my mate said to me, oh man, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. Like, we were meant to do a 30-minute session and I had it programmed out, but I didn't realize how fit I was becoming. And within 5 minutes they said, how long does this go for? And so that was kind of when I knew that no one was offering, if you say bodyweight training to people, they think push-ups, sit-up, chin-up, star jumps, air squats. What else is there? And when you come to ZUU, it's just people don't know that you can do these things. So that's when I realized no other trainers were doing it. And that's when I went and did my certifications as a PT and a strength coach, was after those 2 years. That's when I realized there was a commercial value to it. A whole story. We should do another podcast on us opening our gym with the kids, which was just a shed, called it ZUU. No one knew what ZUU was. So we've done so much grafting to just get the name. And in hindsight, guys, I wasn't there to share this with the world. I was actually just trying to make a living. That's the truth. I was just trying to save our house because there was no other work. So I had to create work. Now when I look back and people say, oh, it's amazing you've created a brand. That's not why I was there in the first place. But now the more I did it, like the first time I went to Virgin Active, the first time I did it with the public, I had some really high mentors, ex-Olympians and things like that I'd trained with, who told me that what I'd created was special. The culture was special. The human touch was special. There was nothing like it out there. And that's when very quickly went into sports, armed forces, and then commercial after that. But I didn't mean for that to happen. So if you're thinking there was some strategic plan, it wasn't. It was just following where it went. And
for the listeners to understand, Virgin Active was one of the biggest health club chains in UK, also South Africa, Spain, and probably a few other countries. Yeah. And that's more than average gym, more premium gym.
Premium gym, yeah.
And from my experience, what was surprising for me, that not the value what you are adding to actual fitness sessions, but the mental changes in your body language, how you approach the members. So you did a great job on training other coaches, but not just to do physical exercise to teach members, but to know how to communicate, to deliver a better human experience.
And you're big on that, Martis. I think that's why we connected so early, 10 years ago? It's a long time. But it's we call it in Australia soft skills. You can teach anyone hard skills. Soft skills are very hard to teach. Soft skills is the way you greet someone. I'm a hugger. So I just come up and hug you anyway. And something very special. Can I talk a little bit about human connection?
Yes.
Is that cool?
Yes,
So
yes.
if you're listening in, human connection, because I've been to some countries around the world and they're like, we don't do that touch thing. And I just say, whatever, man. Like, we'll just train. And I guarantee you, it'll change. And as you train, as the duress and the mental fatigue sets in, people naturally, without thinking, just start grabbing people. Touch, hug. And if you don't believe me, whenever there's a natural disaster, watch the way humans interact. Humans grab any stranger and they just do this. But in everyday life, we think, oh, we need barriers. You don't. When you have a baby, a newborn, they lay a newborn on mum's skin to skin. Why do they do that? It's because humans, it's a fundamental need of being human, is the human touch and connection. Inside fitness, we don't do it much. I do it in every single session of ZUU. Every time I train with Martis, I'll give Martis a hug. And the people behind the screen, the first thing I did with them when I met them this morning was give them a hug. Because I'm a hugger anyway, but I know what that does to a human being. Like, it changes everything about them. So the reason I do it inside ZUU, guys, is because I know where I'm going to take you. And where I'm going to take you is going to hurt. So I pre-frame what's about to happen inside the class. So there's this human connection, and then as we train and it gets harder and harder, people get closer and closer, and then it becomes like a spiritual experience, this emotional experience where they're like connected to these people, and that's why it's so good inside gyms, is because it creates this, they're all the intangible things that we find hard to talk about, that culture, but they're the things that I truly believe in business are the strongest. It's not the things you can see, it's all as good as it is, it's the things that you can't see, that feeling people get.
You can buy people with equipment. It's always how you deliver that experience for anyone, even for your family members, for close people. And like you said, if you have problems yourself, like some of the men have, so it's difficult to go back home and live everyday life and just pretend everything is fine. But in your opinion, when we go to work on a daily basis and we struggle more because we are financially not stable, or because we have that pressure that I have to support my family, I have to give what's best, and then we put so much stress, and probably our performance is dropping in general, because you cannot be at your complete potential, at your top potential, if your brain is not right.
Yeah, absolutely. So my new program is called My 10-7. And My 10-7 is about being selfish as a man for 10 minutes, 7 days a week. And by that, I mean you're doing training and you're investing in yourself. It's only 10 minutes, and you know what it's like, 10 minutes with me, right, Martis? You don't need equipment. You can do it at home, but you have to learn to be selfish. Now, if you tell a man to be selfish, like the men we're talking about, and I call these like strong family men, it's a very foreign concept for them, because we were raised Australian. I presume it's the same here. You put yourself on the back burner. You put your family first. You sacrifice everything for your family, and that's okay. But what you need to understand is, if you were giving your family, your loved ones, the worst version of yourself
At home.
Like if I was to talk to your family and say, can you tell Dad anything? And they're like, oh, no. I have to choose when to tell Dad because, otherwise he might explode. That's not good. And if people say, oh, I've got to tippy toe around Nathan on eggshells and, in case he's not in the right mood, that's not good. And when I say that to men, they actually get quite upset, because that's the way their family and friends talk about them. And that's why they drink or do all these other things to try and take the edge off. And sometimes it's when you explain that to them, because I've lived it for 20 years, when you explain that to them, they're like, oh man, like that's my life, what you're talking about. So then when you say to them, so do you understand, you're telling me family first, blah, 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 all that stuff. I get it. But this is you giving them that. Is that the version you want to give your family? And they say, no, I don't, but I don't know what else to do. Like you said, I work every day. I've got my performance. I've got the bills to pay. I've got this. I've got the business to run, all the rest of it. I've got the children to raise. I don't see them enough. I've got my wife and we've got problems. And I'm like, whatever, man. Simplify it. At the center of all that is you. So let's just forget all the other things. Let's just work on you. Just 10 minutes a day. It's going to be hard, but good things in life take time, and good things in life are worth fighting for. So that My 10-7, 10 minutes a day, 7 days a week, core values, strip all the rubbish you're hiding behind. No one needs to see it. This is just me and you. And then you get to rebuild you from the inside out. That's the thing. It's from the inside out. And yes, we're doing physical. So again, don't think it's a workout. We're training to get to the emotional, mental states. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
That we want to get that emotional intelligence and control, and we want to build mental resilience. But you can't separate those. You can't say we're going to do a mental health program and build resilience. Well, no, you can't, in my opinion, because physical's tied into mental, social, spiritual, and emotional health. They're all tied together. So for tough men, they know physical work. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And the easiest point to meet them at, so I always try and find that the easiest place to engage with them is is physical. They're like, okay, we'll do something physical. And very quickly they start talking to me about their problems because I know physical's the door for me to open, the easiest door to open to get the mental and the emotional states going.
Does it help people to relax, or it just we have something in our brain what helps us to just let it go when we have physical pain?
Oh, totally. You know all the science, and we can quote all the science we want about the endorphins and the chemical releases on all the rest of it. But in very simplistic terms, for me, when it's physically intense, it like opens the door or opens the lid on all the emotions a man has been bottling up. Mm-hmm. All the things I've been bottling up, pushing aside. I don't want to think about it. I'll work on myself later. They know they won't, but they just push it over here. When it's that physical intensity, all that stuff just comes out and they can't control it. But that's what I want, because the more it comes out, the more capacity for clarity a man has. Because you know what it's like, Martis, when you and I are full mentally and we're doing our best, there's not much left for anything. And we're so close to cracking. But when we do something physical for us, we seem to have this little bit more sort of breathing space. But then if you do this intensely to actually work on you, not to get a six-pack or muscles, that's not what that will happen anyway. But if you're there with the intent to work on me as a man, like, I'll give you an example. If I want to work on, say, gratitude, and I say to a man, you know, you got to work on gratitude. I got nothing to be grateful for. My blah, blah, blah. I just let them purge. I'm like, yep, whatever. Then I say, okay, the homework for today, I want you to go home, tell your wife you love her. I do that every day. I let them talk, whatever. I want you to go home, but I want you to think about something your wife has been doing that has been going unnoticed, maybe for you the whole time you've been together. And they're like, I don't know, what is it? And I'm like, I don't know. It's your life. Think about it. Think about it. And they have to think. And then sometimes I help them. What about the ensuite mirror? They're like, what are you talking about? Do you clean the ensuite mirror? No, I don't clean it. Is the ensuite mirror clean when you shave? Yeah, it's clean. Who do you think's cleaning the ensuite mirror? Oh, my wife? Yeah. Have you ever told her? Never. So I said, today, go home, and that it could be any example, but you're looking for something that's been happening that's going unnoticed. Go home, spend 10 minutes, look your wife in the eye, and tell her how much you appreciate her, what she's doing, sorry you haven't noticed it, in a meaningful way. Do you know how many men say to me, I would rather train with you. I would rather train with you than do that. Because it's so far outside their comfort zone. But you and I both know if we do that to our wives, it's not like buying flowers and chocolate and alcohol. That's easy stuff. That's rubbish. That's shallow. If you do this in a meaningful way, looking them in the face, and these men are so uncomfortable doing that. I said, get out of your comfort zone. And when they do it, it changes the relationship just like that. And they feel this sense of sort of purpose, grounding, and that's what I'm talking about. When you were doing that every day with an action plan every day, not just fitness, that's what I mean. Fitness is shallow. If you're doing this with an action plan every day, within 3 months, like you start to become a different man. You talk different, walk different, present yourself different. People start coming up to these men and saying, what are you doing? Like, you're just a different man now. You don't want to be around toxic influences anymore. You don't want to be around men who bring out the worst in you. Oh, but they're still my mates, Nate. They're not your mates. They just want you around so you can enable them to drink or whatever it is. Just cut them off. And most men aren't strong enough mentally to make those decisions. Does that make sense? Because they don't know who they are. When you know who you are, you don't waste your time with people that aren't going in the same direction. And that's... So, big picture, I truly believe the missing link in a lot of societies are men between 30 and 55. In Australia, we call them the old bulls. You have the young bucks and you have the old bulls.
Because we are tired of work, because we fed up with life.
No, we call them the old bulls because in a paddock, there's an old bull and you got the young bucks that are full of energy and that, and they think the old bulls mean nothing, but the old bulls are smart and they're still strong. And they're the mentors. But when the old bulls have lost their way, there's no mentors. So all the young men coming through, they're just doing the best they can. They're out of control. There's this problem, that problem, but there's no mentors for them. And to help you understand my challenge, at 15, when I became an apprentice carpenter, my 2 mentors were both alcoholics and divorced. So for the next 4 years, they were my mentors, and then I turned out the way I did.
Bad example.
So if both of them were working on themselves as men to be better men every single day, and they were my influence for 4 years, well, it's a different story. That's why I'm passionate about.
But don't you think that to break these barriers, it takes time? Because what we actually have at home, our childhood experience, I give you an example. If, for example, my mom or dad was not hugging me often, so we carry this to our through our childhood to our adulthood, and we do the same. So we don't let people too close. So when you get your children, you have to work on yourself, because it's kind of, you know that it's good to hug, you need to hug your kids, but we have to learn how to do it, because in your childhood, you didn't have that experience. So we often find ourselves that we understand what we have to do, but we have these barriers in the head where we have to work on a daily basis and teach ourselves to hug people, to appreciate people. So it's a lifetime project where we have to give it to our kids. And when they grow up, they have different experience. It comes naturally.
Yeah. I can't add any more to that, Martin.
No, you have to. You have to. That was a question.
It sounded like the answer as well. No. Past experiences don't define us. Past mistakes don't define us either. I understand that there's lots of barriers to entry. Without going into, and I'm not qualified because I'm not a psychologist, but what I do know is there's self-acceptance and self-forgiveness. I've had past experiences when I was young that I created a world that was hostile. The world wasn't necessarily hostile, but that was the world I projected from my childhood. So there comes a few stages, acceptance and forgiveness of who you were. It doesn't mean the rest of your life has to be that. So if you are sitting with me and you think to yourself, you know what? I actually believe the human touch is a fundamental need. You've just explained to me, babies on mums. So here's something for you to think about. People say, oh, this human touch thing, Nathan, it's, that's not me. Because when I do the human touch in sports, very strong. When I do it in armed forces, very strong. And people will say, yeah, but that's because it's those two environments. They're taught to do that. And then I say to people, yeah, but I do it with the public and it's the same. And they say, well, how can it be the same? So I say, well, when you have a baby and if you want your child to be in technology, you don't lay your child on a laptop.
Yes.
If you want them to be an athlete, you don't lay them on a basketball. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
It's the fundamental need of being human. Another example is in prison, we call it solitary confinement because it's a discipline. We remove all physical contact because we know that is a discipline for a human being. So if you say, okay, that makes sense to me, your next step is to implement it. And that's when I tell people leadership is a lonely path. I'm not talking about being a leader of a company or whatever. I'm talking about being the leader of you, your thoughts and actions. They're the only two things you can control in life. Thoughts and actions. Everything else you can only influence. So if you say to yourself, okay, I need to maybe be more physical with my kids or that's going to take some work. But good things in life take time. Good things in life are worth fighting for. And remember, guys, people learn more by what you do than what you say. If you say you should do something and don't do it, you're a hypocrite. That's what you are. You're a hypocrite. So you can't tell your kids, well, you need to do this. And if you don't do it, your kids are just going to say, well, you don't do it. But if you do the best you can, it's like when I train with people. The reason I train with people is not to be better than them. It's to earn their respect and show them that I can do the work that I tell them to do. And that's when they bond with me, especially fit people, right, Martis? When we're training with fit people, they want to see that Nathan is suffering with them. So and I'm not fitter than them, I'm just doing the work. And then when I have a serious talk with them after, they listen to me like an older brother or father because that foundation of respect is there. So the point for you guys is, as Martis is talking about, especially with the human touch, because in a lot of countries it's quite challenging. And I understand that. If you didn't grow up with that, my heart goes out to you. But the more you do it, it just becomes part of you, especially if you're driven by purpose. Don't do it because Nathan or Martis is telling you to do it. Do it because you understand the purpose behind it. Do it because you want your children to have that in their life. And make sure your actions speak louder than your words.
And that goes for kids as well. But can the children help their parents if they don't realize they have to change? Because often now kids are so smart, they actually realize that my parents are in trouble, and sometimes without even knowing, they are trying to put mom and dad together. They are trying to make their mood better, because as soon as children see that their parents are going into a fight, we start laughing. We start laughing and trying to make moms and dads' moods better. But when they grow up, they get these mental problems that, oh, I suffered, my mom and dad was fighting. But if we are smart enough, can we guide their parents and say, look, you need some help, you can work on your self-development? It's probably difficult.
Yeah, it is. And I'll just be honest, I'm not qualified to talk about, what the kids can do. What I do know, but is, the Bible talks about out of the mouths of babes. In other words, your children can change so much about an interaction. And not just by what they say, but if your child does something consistently, like if your child does something consistently, for men, I can't speak for women, but for men my age, we respect that, right? If a child shows discipline in any course or endeavor, for us dads, we really respect that because we know that's a good quality for their life. So, yeah, I think kids can get involved, but again, a kid's life experience is here compared to an adult. And a lot of times when kids are trying to make light hard of a situation, they're like coping mechanisms because of the hostile environment.
You have seen a lot of men, troubled men. So what would be the signs where you notice it's depression, anxiety? What would be the signs when you realize he needs some help? Or I would have to realize now I need some help because my mood is bad. I'm not where I should be with my mental state and all this
I think all men need help.
Yes.
I'll just say it now. All men need help. Look, it's very hard to obviously just look at someone and you don't judge a book by its cover. So the men I'm talking about, we are very, very good at putting up walls and barriers. You know it's true.
Yes.
You don't let anyone see the weakness. So people go, oh man, they're amazing. They've got it together. So for me personally, it's not until I train with them. It's not until, and by training, I mean, it could be 5 minutes. 5 minutes of just doing some movement together that gets pretty intense, where the conversation changes very quickly. And I've been doing it for long enough where I start to see their body language change. A lot of times they go silent. A lot of times they'll stare at something. And that's this head talk. The head talk's taking over. There's problems at home. I can do it with athlete, armed forces. It doesn't matter. They're still a human being, and it's the exact same process that they go through. And very quickly, I might just ask them a simple question like, you okay, brother? Everything all right? And a lot of times they'll just look at me and I know everything. I already know. Most men, if not all men, need to work on themselves. It's very rare that you find a man who's legitimately working to be a better man every single day. And if they are, they're normally only working on one element, right? Finance, career. Very rare that you find a man who's working on family, relationships, self-worth, self-belief, self-esteem. Very rare you find a man who's doing that every single day. And that's why I say most men need to work on that. But when you train with them, that process happens very quickly. And that's the more you train with them, the more they open up. Oh, you wouldn't believe, Nathan. And a lot of times they'll tell me, I don't even know why I'm telling you these things. I know why. Remember I said that reverse engineering process? I know why they're talking to me. They feel comfortable. I've created a safe space. I don't even like that word, safe space, but that's what it is. They feel like they can trust me because I've earned their respect. Trust isn't earned, trust is given. People get that wrong. You earn respect, people give trust. I trust Martis because he's earned my respect every single time I meet this man. So we're like brothers, right, Martis?
Yes.
We don't just meet someone on the street and go, I trust him. No, you have to earn someone's respect. So when I do the work, physical work with them, and the harder I make it, I'm still there doing the work. Nathan's earning my respect. And then they just talk like a younger brother or whatever. And that's when it all comes out. And that's when you know they've got a problem, and we need to just keep stripping it back.
I don't think you could earn more respect from me, because just by thinking about your training, I'm feeling sick now. So
That's awesome.
I think it's enough where we are at this level. Let's stay at this level. I don't want to push the
No
limits.
more respect.
Let's not push the limits. Just leave where it is.
We're actually doing a session after this, and then we're finishing the podcast, aren't we, Mark?
Yes. So what do you think where the man should start? What's the starting process? Where we should begin?
Today. In a word, today. It's a really good question. One of my favorite quotes comes from Leonardo da Vinci, and his quote is, "The ultimate sophistication or simplicity is the ultimate sophistication." So in other words, we are talking about very sophisticated problems, right? We're talking about mental, emotional problems, or we're talking about marital problems, financial problems. And there's programs that address each one of these. And if you look at those programs, they're very complex programs. And if you come back to the man over here and you say, how many plates are you spinning? And they say, too many plates. I've got my wife, I've got the kids, I've got sports days, I've got my work, I've got employees, I've got this, I've got that, I'm supposed to be doing fitness. There's so many plates spinning. So the last thing you want to do is add complexity to your life. So for men, if you're listening in and you're thinking to yourself, you know what, this is me, I need to do something. The first step is to simplify everything. And that's why it's my 10-7. You just need to say to yourself, I need to do 10 minutes for myself today. Don't even think about tomorrow. Just 10 minutes today. You need to be selfish and do what I give to men today. And then tomorrow is another day. Because if you do it today, a lot of times, you'll know this, Martis, a lot of times when you say to a man, you need to do something, they start to overcomplicate it. But where am I going to fit it in? How am I going to do this?
A lot of excuses
straight away, right? And they're the barriers to entry they start to put up. I like to just remove all those barriers to entry and say, you're going to start today before you go to bed. The reason I want people to do it today is because no matter how bad your day goes, and most men who are in this category, something's bad happening every day, no matter how bad your day goes, you can go to sleep knowing that you did 10 minutes for you. And people might think that's not much, but if you're a man that hasn't invested in you for years, decades, it's an amazing feeling. So no matter if you had an argument with employees, your boss, your wife, whatever it is, you can go to sleep and say, well, at least I did 10 minutes for me.
So it would be silly excuse to say, I'm busy. Not to find 10 minutes in your life in a day, it would be silly. And to say, I'm tired because I do physical work and I cannot exercise. So these two probably main excuses for people.
Totally.
No time and I'm tired.
Yep. My body's broken. That's why I've removed all barriers to entry. You can do it at home. You can do it in your bedroom. You can do it at work. It's 10 minutes. It's low impact. It'll still kick your ass. Good. It's meant to.
Let's explain people why it's low impact. It's because of low strain on the joints.
Low strain. So when I went to a park for 2 years, my body was broken from the trades, repetitive motions, like all men in the trades. So I know the barriers to entry. I lived it. So I had to find a way that my body could actually train without high impact on the joints. So I wasn't trying to create a training system. I was just trying to create a way that I could really find the man through bodyweight training. So
with a low impact.
Low impact.
Yeah.
So the low impact nature of within 1 or 2 minutes, it's low impact, but your heart rate will be right up there. And that's a good thing. Remember, it's not the fitness. We're trying to create that emotional space, that mental space for you to be in. And then by the end of the day, like I've said last week, I had to talk with one of the tradesmen in Australia. And I said, when was the last time you did 14 days back to back for you? He just looked at me and just, not even when I was playing football, which was 20 years ago. So he hadn't invested even 10 minutes. He hadn't done that 14 days straight, probably in his life. So now I ask you to think about this. If you do 10 minutes, and it's only 10 minutes, right? Remember what Leonardo said, simplicity. If you do 10 minutes and 14 days' time, you look back on 10 minutes, do you think that will start to have a profound effect on your emotional, mental state, your self-belief, your self-worth, your self-esteem? Absolutely, it will. But if you do it slow and it's not intense, you won't create that emotional. That's what I've got to stress. Because a lot of people say, can I do it slow? I'm like, you can do it as slow as you can, but you're there for a very specific reason. Does that make sense?
Yes. And how long would it take to see the changes? It's not instant.
No. Everyone's different. For some people, they feel on the first day because they've got the endorphins. This is amazing. But you and I both know it's like week 1, week 2, week 3. That's when it starts to get real. And that's why you need to have the other side of the program, which is working on you. Your core values, expected behaviors. You need an action plan. Again, this isn't just training. If you're training and still the same man, well, you're just the same man. You're just going to be a fitter version of the bad man. But if you're working on you as a man, the fitness is the byproduct. You become the better man. Then you see things different. Your interactions are different. The way you talk to people, treat people, respond. You know how people say, oh, he's got a short fuse. Do you use that term over here when someone has a short fuse? Short fuse means...
In a different world, yes. But basically, he's short-tempered, yeah?
Short-tempered, yeah. That just means that his emotions are simmering just beneath the surface. Yes. That's another indication that he's got problems. When you work on yourself, that fuse or temper gets longer and longer and longer, and they're calmer, and they take time to listen. Remember, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should be listening more than you talk. There's so many things to teach these men, but you can't teach these men unless they're working on themselves and they have to feel it. I've got to stress this. People will listen to the way I talk and they say, oh, you're amazing, Nate, the way you talk. And I'm like, I would rather you come and train with me so you can feel it. Because you will remember longer how I make you feel. I'm looking at Ernest over here. I'm going to train with him, smash him. Because I know he will remember me more by the way I make him feel than what I say. Lots of people will say really whimsical, fancy words, and people are like, that's amazing. It's not. Whenever I present, you know me, Martis, whenever I present around the world on different stages, not just fitness, but technology, medical, aviation, education, and I'll present with different presenters, they will like, when we're behind the curtains and I'll ask them what they're talking about and they'll tell me, and I say to them, that's amazing. Now make me feel it. And they look at me and they say, what? I say, make me feel it. You're talking about purpose, you're talking about culture, whatever you're talking about, that's awesome, but make me feel it. And they're like, I don't know how to make you feel it. And I say, I can make you feel what I talk about. I would rather make you feel what I talk about. And that's that emotion. When your emotions are drawn in, it's a different learning process for a human being. And that's this My 10-7. When you're doing 10 minutes on yourself, you are learning and growing from every single experience. That is different to journaling. You can do journaling, but if there's no emotions attached into that, if the heart's not racing and the adrenaline's not going, it's different.
But it's probably different for everyone.
Absolutely.
Because people, when we hear ZUU, we think training and we put that mental benefits last. But every time I try to introduce you, I say, no, Nathan is a good motivator. It's not just about training. So I realized actually on day 1, but not everyone understands. It takes time. So some people get it straight away. Some people it takes time to realize.
Yep.
For me, it was natural. I understood training is training, but mental resilience, to work on yourself through your mental barriers, actually physical barriers. And I did see a man cry on the floor myself.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, there was a guy in the team. His name was Shane. He was actually cramping all over his body. He was crying, but happy with tears. So I do remember.
Happy tears.
Happy tears, yeah.
Nathan, it's so hard.
That was a very good experience.
It is. And look, just on that, Martis, which is a great point that you've mentioned, is lots of people talk about mental toughness and mental resilience now. You know, everyone thinks it's this hot topic. And there's lots of people with their own opinions, which is fine. But there's a difference between mental toughness and mental resilience. Do you want me to
Yes.
explain it? Okay.
Yes.
An easy way for you guys to explain it is if we get an ice tray and you fill it up with water and you stick it in the freezer and you pull it out, the ice inside the tray, if you hit it, should I hit the table, Ernest? No.
You can.
If you hit the ice, it's hard.
Yes.
All right? And so for me, the ice is toughness, the tray is resilient. So listen to this, and you can use this to explain to others.
Mm-hmm.
If you start to twist the tray, what's the first thing that happens, Martis? Normally you can hear it.
The ice cracks. Yeah.
You twist it just a little bit, you hear the crack in the ice. If you twist it some more, the ice will explode out. So for me, mental toughness is the ice. And if you look up the word, mental toughness is tough until it fractures. So for all the people out there talking about mental toughness, I don't want to build toughness where someone will fracture. I want to build resilience where they can be twisted and torqued. What's life? What's marriage? What's a family? You know, Martis,
It's
right?
like mental endurance.
Yeah. You and I are going all over the place. Same with our wives, our children. That's life. Life's dynamic, vibrant, passionate. So you want resilience. You don't want toughness. Toughness is it's this shallow thing. It'll fracture. Trust me, it'll fracture. So when you build mental resilience, it's this ability to be able to bend and flex with whatever's happening in your life. You can have the best plan and then tomorrow something tragic happens. And the whole plan's gone out the window. So you need that mental resilience. Otherwise,
And it will happen. at one
absolutely,
point.
that's life, right? It will happen. So when we train, Martis, you got it. So whenever I go to, say, armed forces or elite sports, they say, Nathan, we want you to do dynamic mobility. We want you to do ZUU. We want you to take them to a dark space. I actually want to, this is my hidden agenda, I actually want to earn respect from the players to unlock the emotional mental door. I told you all men need to work on themselves. When you train with me and I make it hard, you will talk to me, right? So all the players start talking to me about problems with their wives, problems with their family, problems with gambling, problems with smoking. I'm taking drugs. I've got an injury that I haven't told the coach. They're all the things they're hiding from here. So if I help them deal with that, what do you think their performance will do? So the coaches get me in to do physical performance, but I'm there for another reason. And then all of a sudden they're like, these players are crazy, like they're amazing. But that's just being human, right? You and I both know that side. So yeah, the mental performance side that ZUU can unlock, I haven't come across anything similar. Not that I'm trying to be smart or anything. It's just that ZUU has a different story, man.
And if you have one this breaking session, can it last forever? You probably remember the whole life, and it has an impact on you. So I think if you have this communication where you have to earn this respect, it's not something what goes away within an hour or a day. It stays with you, and then you can deliver it to other people to give your experience. So you said you do a lot of work with a tradesman, and you did work with other trades, so armed forces. So is there a difference to your sessions when you deliver to armed forces, to tradesmen, to other trains or sports? What's the difference between these, or it's all the same?
Believe it or not, it's all the same. Now people go, oh, it can't be the same. But it is, all right? It's the same movements. Intensity, format may be a little different, but what you need to understand is in armed forces, absolutely they're fit, okay? Sports, they're fit, but lots of injuries in those two. Everyday people, maybe not that fit, but maybe a little less injuries. Over here, there's screws, nuts and bolts, all sorts of things. And because ZUU is so different, you can be really, really fit, but you just don't do ZUU. And ZUU just tests you in different ways. We were just talking to an athlete out here, a good power athlete, and he said, mate, my body was quivering after I did a bit of ZUU. He said it made me realize how unfit I am. Now, he's fit. Don't get me wrong.
Ex-armed
forces.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's still fit, but he's just not ZUU fit. He just doesn't move his body like we do with ZUU, and he doesn't do repeat efforts. Lots of people think, I need a 2-minute break. I'm like, you get 10 seconds. You get 10 seconds, we're going again. That's when it becomes emotional, right? Because you face a choice. I'm either in or I'm out. And if you say to yourself, I'm in, well, that's you teaching you that you can face up to things. Humans learn the most about themselves in the most traumatic situations in life. It's not a nice thing. I want you all to think about that. Think about something that was traumatic you went through. I guarantee you learned something profound about yourself, right? I create that every time you train with me. It's a traumatic experience. It's meant to be, because I know every time you come with Nathan, I'm so scared, man, I'm so scared. But the feeling you get at the end of it, you're like, that's amazing. Then when you go back to other training, you think, I've got so much more to give. And then if you do this, like, again, for tradesmen, if you're doing 10 minutes of that, sure, it starts off slow because your body's broken, but that change happens quick, right, Martis, in ZUU. That mobility comes very quick, and then the intensity starts to pick up. Within 1-2 weeks, the way you're moving compared to who you were is totally different. And so the learnings become greater.
But what would you say to people if they say, oh, I can put you through your paces with weight training? Is it similar if you go to the barrier, to the breaking point? Is it similar experience or it's different?
I definitely think it's different. Simply because weights is an external load. Like if you're lifting, and don't get me wrong, like you do CrossFit, you do bodybuilding, that is some super hard lifting. But you're not moving dynamically the way your body's meant to move. You're moving in set planes of motion, you're lifting external weight, you've got to be careful. You don't want to be too fatigued lifting weight, and you don't want it to be too intense, right? Because the risk of injury is so high. And if you get injured and then you can't train, well, then there's more mental, emotional problems. So over here with ZUU or bodyweight training has the best benefit to risk ratio training on earth. In other words, it's just the way you move as a human. If I put a skipping rope in here, it's considered more risky than bodyweight training. If we're doing heavy weights, well, then that's way more risky because the risk of injury is so much higher. So what I want you to understand is here, it's safer, you can move freer, but being in this space more will actually help you lift heavier, faster, longer, because we're working on the fundamentals over here.
And you can generate more power, more explosive power.
You know
and it can actually help power lifters and during their strength training with weights.
Absolutely.
So we can combine both.
Absolutely. And for bodybuilders normally do slow, steady cardio, but a lot of the new sort of disciplines coming out is they want to do HIIT training. Well, you want to do HIIT training that's low impact. You know, and if you do like 8 minutes with me, if we do an 8-minute ZUU session for most bodybuilders, they love it. So we're sort of going into the fitness world, which is kind of cool. If you see someone crawling around and doing bodyweight movements and you're traditional strength athletes, you're probably disengaged from it. And that's social media teaching it the wrong way. If you come and talk to me and I show you some movements and explain why the movements will help you open up your body, trunk rotation, and I just speak your language, all of a sudden you want to learn about it.
So now we talk about people who train in the gym and they train because they have some issues, mental issues, or they want to increase their fitness levels. But can we do ZUU and help ourselves as to avoid these problems? Basically, as how to express myself, to keep myself mentally fit so I don't get these problems. So actually running up front and doing everything not to have these mental issues. Can you work on yourself?
Absolutely. And I should say, Martis's English is incredible because you should hear my Lithuanian. It's very, very bad. You're doing awesome. Buddy.
No, but 3 years in Lithuania.
Yeah, we were talking about it last night, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, look, ZUU for me, ZUU is considered the world's hardest bodyweight training, and a lot of people are scared by that, but that's okay because ZUU's not for everyone. Anyone can do ZUU, but ZUU's not for everyone. For those that want to better themselves physically, emotionally, socially, spiritually, mentally, then I would encourage you to come and try ZUU, because when you do ZUU, you understand that when I'm on tour, when I'm traveling, if there's no gym, like wherever I am, I can. This is me. This is my training. And when you learn to move dynamically, so as an example, you can do push-ups. Push-ups is just like bench press. It's a set plane of motion. You want to move your shoulder joint in different ways because that's the way you're designed to move. So the more you do ZUU, the more you understand where dysfunction is in your body, not just physically, but mentally, because you've got to push through those things and become mentally, emotionally stronger.
That's very interesting. And how long have you been doing this type of training, and how long you've
2
been
months.
helping? 2 months, no chance.
How long have I been doing ZUU's? 2007, 2008. is when I started. What's that? I don't know, 15 years. And, okay, so here's a concept. Can I explain this?
Yes,
Here's
of
a
course.
concept I'd like your audience to understand. This is really important because this is the concept I explain to men in trades between 30 and 55 who need to work on themselves. When people start to do work on themselves, 1 day, 2 day, 1 week, 2 week, they think the change is linear, right? So I'm working on myself here, here, here. So it's a linear change. So the result should be here. But then after 2 weeks, 2 months, nothing seems to be happening. That's when most people drop off. Remember, I was in a park for 2 years. I wasn't there for linear change. I was there as long as I needed to be there. But the thing is, the way it actually works is you start down here, research the compounding effect, compounding interest. Einstein talks about it. This is the way it actually works is you start down here, and they call this because it goes like this and then it comes up here. That's the way it actually works. And they call this low point the valley of disappointment. You know, when most people are training, I can't see the results.
Yes.
So for the first 2 years, I was still working on me. I wasn't that fit. But then after that, I'm 51 now. I'm not as fit as I used to be, but I still go okay. People say to me, oh, you're crazy fit. But that's because I did years and years and years like this. And then if you stay consistent, it starts to skyrocket so much higher than a linear path. So my advice to you is if you're doing ZUU to work on yourself, which you should be, especially as man, or if you're doing it for fitness, you have to trust the process and stay the path. It will always be hard. I was in a park not to dominate ZUU. It wasn't even called ZUU. I wasn't there to dominate this training. I was there to always question my belief. I would vomit. I would train to blackout. I have video footage of me training and I'd just pass out because that's me, because it's so intense. ZUU, I always wanted it to test me as a man, to question my self-belief. That's the way I train every single day. So if you're doing that every single day, it starts like this, but then all of a sudden it just skyrockets and you don't know how fit and strong mentally you're becoming until you're with other people. The first session I did was with my brother and 2 mates. They thought I was crazy. They said, are you doing this intensity for 30 minutes? We can't even do 4 minutes. And I didn't know because I was training by myself. And that surprised me. And every single time I deliver an armed forces sports, they'll say to me, oh, you're so fit. And I'm like, well, I don't mean to be. I'm just here because I'm trying to be a better man. And that's when they're like, oh, man, this is so different. You talk different to everyone else because they're still talking about fitness. You're talking about life. I'm like, yeah, but life's everything.
And you work on yourself, on your self-development. We have to work on our pride, self-esteem, self-respect, respecting others, so it can actually help to be a better at what you do. Your business, your everyday life, you can achieve better goals. And actually we get a lot of challenges when we run businesses. So it will help you to keep all the challenges away from you and stay mentally strong.
Yeah, absolutely. Fall in love with the process. Probably a bit loud. They're going to have to turn that down. You've got to fall in love with the process. So many people, Martis, will set a goal. Goals, they're not that good. You do need a goal, right? It's like if you're in a team, you want to win a championship, but so does everyone else. Everyone else has the same goal. So sometimes when people, if they don't reach that goal, they're like, oh, I failed. Like the goal is everything or nothing. Or they reach the goal and they don't know what to do next. You have to fall in love with the process because the championship is in the process, right, Mud? You and I train because we love the process. We will always train every day. It's just who we are. So be careful about setting goals. Yes, the goals are in there somewhere, but don't fall in love with the goal. Fall in love with the process. The process is every day. If you get 1% better at one aspect of you every single day, in 360 days, you're a different man or woman. You're just a different human. If you do that for years, well, then that's when like I present and talk. So when I was in America, right, I won #1 speaker, #1 workout for National Academy of Sports Medicine for 2 years, both years running. Broke the record for most people at a workout. I wasn't trying to break any records. I was just being me. Hug people, everything we've been talking about. But that shows you there's not enough people, I guess, like me talking about just truth, being authentic. Everyone's scared of that. I'm just like, that's just me. I talk like a truck driver, because I want people to understand me. I don't try and talk in academic sort of language. I just want everyday people to understand me so they can use the tools to help themselves and teach other people to help themselves.
So to explain the audience, National Academy of Sports Medicine is similar to REPS, what we have in Europe. So you was a speaker where you would coach other coaches and speak at the events, and you was one of the best speakers. So
yeah, voted number one by the attendees. It's a 3-day conference, Optima, and following year was voted number one again, and we broke the record for my morning workout. And it's just doing ZUU with people.
But don't you think that sometimes to get full potential of ourselves, we have to have that breaking point in life where we fail? We fail on our daily life, we fail with our business, just to feel that pain, where we have to stand up again, get better, and work on our personal development. Because if you are successful all the time, you probably don't get to realize that you will come up with these problems in the future.
Sure. But I haven't met, Martis, anyone who's been successful in life that is unsuccessful in other areas of life. I've met so many people who are successful in business. How's your marriage? Third marriage. How's the kids?
One of or the other would fail.
Yeah.
If you
so
are successful.
A lot of times in life, we judge success by finance or career. That's not what I'm talking about. That is one aspect. But success could be a good man in the community.
So your definition, your personal definition of success, what's success for you in life?
Success for me is being a community leader, loving father, loving a listener more than a talker, in control of your emotions, exercises patience. That for me is a leader.
So Nathan now, and Nathan 20 years ago, definition?
Bad.
Bad.
One word, bad.
Bad.
Yeah, I knew who I should be, and that's the other thing, Martis. When you say people need to experience pain and failure, yes, they do. Everyone does. That's just life. And yes, we need to pick ourselves up and go again. But there are so many people, especially for men in trades, that just have coping mechanisms. They fail all the time, but they're not learning. They're failing and just using stuff to mask the pain to keep going. Remember what I said before? When I say this to men, if this is you here in 12 months, what does your life look like? Most men don't want to tell me what that looks like because it's too scary. So I say to them, if you understand you need to change, yes, Nathan, I need to change. Do you need to work on you? Yes, Nathan, I need to work on me. Do you need to be selfish and push yourself to the top of the priority list so you can be a better version for your family? Yes. So if we change here and we come up here, what does that 12 months look like? They get excited. I don't know. I've never done this before. Mm-hmm. So it could be anything, right? Well, could it? I'm like, I don't know. It's your life. It's your story. But fall in love with the process and you can create a different destination.
So does it mean that women are more resilient? Because
I think women are way more resilient than men. I'm just going to come out and say it.
Yeah. No, you're just saying that because your wife is going to watch your show.
Totally.
Okay.
Oh, look, I think women obviously are genetically different to men. Women have for me personally, and I've trained with a lot of women, they have a higher threshold of pain, in my personal opinion, to men. And I've always said this to men when we've trained with men and women. If a woman starts breathing through pain, you're screwed. Like, you're screwed because their tolerance for lactic is different. But they are emotional creatures, but they cycle different to men. Men is 24 hours, women is like 28 days. So they're different. You can't put them in the same thing. But I will say that when a woman wants to get on a path, because it's the same, if a woman wants to get on a path to self-development, self-esteem, and there's so much garbage out there with social media, so many women are lost, ZUU can work exactly the same for them as it does for men. My passion, obviously, is to help men. I was just thinking of something, but now forgot it.
So it's okay. I have more questions for you.
Okay.
We have more topics to discuss. Mm-hmm. But when we talk about lactic acid threshold, let's say I think I'm at my 100 lactic acid threshold. How far do you think you can push me to work on to be better at my better tolerance at my lactic acid threshold, because that's important for soldiers, for people who do physical work, for people who want to be better at fitness, for competing athletes. So how how far we can go with our lactic acid tolerance?
Oh, I think it's unlimited. And my approach is very different to most coaches. A quick story. Back in 2011, I think, we had a purpose-built altitude chamber built in my little shed, my gym back in Australia. Now, for those of you listening in, we had a room, I don't know, 10 meters by 3 meters. It had 11 altitude CAT systems on the roof. And what that means is, it's not like wearing a mask. You know how people wear an altitude mask and they turn a dial and they think they're at 10,000 feet? You're not, okay? All you're doing is restricting the same oxygen.
The breathing.
Yeah, you're restricting your breathing, but it's still 21% oxygen. That is a totally different physiological response than going into a room that has 17% oxygen. It means, say, that the altitude chambers would scrub the nitrogen out of the air and they'd pump in 17% oxygen. So you walk in and your mouth could be open and you're trying to breathe,
away.
but there's less oxygen in the room.
So what's the response from your body when you walk into a room with
Shock.
70% shock? Mental shock?
Mental shock. So it means if you want to get a little bit technical, it means your mitochondria in the cell is working so much harder to burn the fuel because there is less
As energy.
oxygen. Yeah.
As energy.
Because there's less oxygen per cubic meter.
Because your heart delivers less oxygen, pumps it less into your cells.
Yeah, and blood congeals quicker. So we would do crazy training. I was training with Olympic athletes at the time, and they said no one's doing this training. Everyone's doing long exposure altitude training. No one's doing interval training. And we did that for 2 years. So we would have a hot room, 31 degrees. I don't know, what's that in thing?
31 degrees, Lithuanian degrees.
Yeah, okay. 31 degrees. 31 degrees, so hot, 10 kilo vest, no air conditioner, and we would train for an hour and a half, lose 5 kilos in fluid. So the lactic acid would build in the first 5 minutes. And we would push through that for like an hour and a half and lose 5 kilos of body fluid. Now, people were saying, that is crazy, that's dangerous. But an Olympic athlete said to me, you know what the funny thing is, Nathan, when you get all these comments? He used to call me a pioneer. And I'm not saying that to be egotistical or anything like that. I was just pushing my limits, self-belief, right? He said, you have science and everyone relies on science, which is fine, okay, but science has a place. Then you have pioneers. Pioneers are people who are doing things that science will then come and validate. And once science validates it, everyone goes, oh, it's the science. It's not the science. It's the person who's been doing it, who's been pioneering a new path. And the good example of that is, I think 1964, Mexico Olympics. Because of that altitude, people couldn't work out why some countries were smashing other countries. After that, they worked out it was altitude, and then altitude training exploded. And it is what it is today. So think about it. People were pioneering altitude training. All of a sudden, science validates it. So for me personally, when I talk about lactic thresholds and pushing, I believe it's untapped, because I'll tell you another story. When I was doing a conference, there was a Stanford associate strength and conditioning coach. He was the vice president. And he was on a stand next to me doing what's those blood constrictor things from Japan? You know, those things you pump up PSI and they restrict your blood? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Needles or no?
No. It's like a pressure bandage you put on and it restricts blood flow.
Tourniquet.
Yeah, but
the one you put where you
it's for
stopping
sports.
the bleed, yeah? But for sports.
But this is for sports. So they put them around the top of your legs and the top of your arms.
So what does it do?
It's meant to restrict the blood flow to try and like
you feel
mimic
your hands are numb, getting numb, pins and needles.
Yeah, it's been around for a long time. Japan leads the space in the 60s.
So what's the benefit of it?
I don't know. You have to talk to him.
Okay.
I was teaching ZUU on the stand next to him. Anyway, he watched me for 3 days doing touch training with people. On the third day, he said, I've got to train with you. And he was fit. His name's Johan. And I said, sure, I'll train with you. And he said, but I'm only going to train with you if you wear these things.
On.
During
training.
And I was like, I don't care. I'll train with anything. And I said, but if I beat you, I'm going to punch you in the ribs. So we went and trained, and he was fit. He was good. He was a triathlete. And I had these things on, and they felt like a tourniquet. But mentally, you can't beat me mentally. When you spent 2 years to fight you, that's the hardest fight you'll ever do. So this stuff here, it's easy. And I'm not saying it was hard, but it wasn't hard like he thought. I passed him after 4 minutes and I punched him in the ribs. After our session, he said to me, I want to do blood work on you because I think your blood is different. And that's all that altitude, all the things I've been teaching you, that's just pioneering, doing crazy things, testing the human
Limits.
mentally, emotionally, physically. No one's doing that because they have all these parameters. And he said, I just want to do blood work on you because he said, you can hold an 85% heart rate and it looks like you're moving at light speed. I'm not, okay? I'm not that quick, but I can hold this level for like an hour. He can hold this level for 2-3 minutes and he nosedives.
But it's naturally what body is capable of doing.
That's right. So when he's down here, Nathan looks like he's getting quicker. I'm not getting quicker. I'm just holding the tempo. Does that make sense?
Yes.
The tempo we start with is the tempo I finish with. Mm-hmm. Whereas he's like down here. And this is like a Stanford University vice president, strength and conditioning coach who was into triathlon. Like this is as educated as you can get, and he's asking to do blood work on me. So for those of you listening in, science has a place, yes. But when it says, oh, you can only do this, another example I give, if you nearly hit people say your heart rate is 220 minus your age, right? That's supposedly your maximum heart rate. And I say to people when they say that, I'm 51.
But that's just a general number.
But people go, oh, I can't get my heart rate higher than that. And I'm like, yeah, until you nearly have a car accident.
Yes.
Then your heart will go above that. Your heart doesn't go, 220 minus my age, I can't. Your heart just does what it does. So in life, you will face traumatic situations that go way higher than you in training. Way higher. That's just humans. So for me, I try everything I do, I told you before, whenever I train, I try and mimic life. And the most traumatic things you'll go through with me won't be the most traumatic things you go through in life. But I'm preparing you as best I can to go through that in life and be the support network you need to be for those people you love around you.
So the answer would be the human's body.
Sorry, did I give an answer in all of that? I don't know. What was the answer?
The answer would be the human's body is unmeasurable. How far we can go, the
limitless.
Limits, all what we know from science. It's not like we cannot believe the science, but it's more to it.
Believe the science, but this again, especially when we're talking about these things, Martis, science validates what people are doing.
Yes.
People are breaking records all the time. That science is going, oh, we didn't think that's possible, but now we know it is possible. That's because humans are out there doing these amazing things. So when it comes to threshold, I just smile and go, well, how long do we have? Like, let's see how far we can go and push those limits. And then next time we visit that space, that's the other thing. People do things once. If you do it once, that doesn't mean much to me because life isn't a one-off effort. Life is repeat efforts. So if you ever do a hard session with me, I'll say that's our benchmark. Next time we do the same thing, we have to beat that. Right, Ernest? Yeah. Ernest is like, no, I don't want to.
I can't do it. So did you get to answers? Did they take your blood?
No, because I flew out that night. But it really helped, and we stayed friends. We're still friends today. Mm-hmm. It really helped me understand that if you're in, especially in America's too overcomplicated, and for me personally, just too scientific. Yeah, their sports are exactly the same. When you go to other places where, like I'll have athletes say to me, if I'm working with triathletes, I'll say, or a cyclist, Nathan, my seat weighs 180 grams. And I'm like, who cares? And they're like, no, I care because it's a 500-pound seat. And I'm like, okay, I'll show you a frog squat. And I'll show them a frog squat and I'll see how stiff they are through their gait. And I'll say, well, if I just do this one simple movement with you, I guarantee you in like 2 weeks' time, you won't be talking about your seat. So that's what I mean. Like, remember what Leonardo said? Sophistication, simplicity.
People listening would think that to get into exercise, especially those who don't exercise, it's very difficult. So what would be your motivation for people who want to start exercise, who know nothing about exercise? And weight training, gym looks so complicated. So can it help people? Can ZUU be like a gateway to other sports as well?
Oh, look, I think so, Martis. But for me, it's always keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it, but find out why you're doing it in the first place. You have to understand your driver. If your driver is to get fit, that's okay. But me personally, that's not going to last.
Is it not the same with everything what we do in life?
No, I don't think it is because Martis, why?
I mean, purpose. We have to have a purpose with everything what we do in life to achieve the best version or to set the standards.
Yeah, exactly. You got to have a purpose because when it's raining or you've had a long day at work, that's when you're going to rely on the purpose. That's when most people just stop coming because it's too hard and they go to something else and they want motivation. The difference between motivation and inspiration, motivation is like a carrot you dangle in front of a donkey to make it act and behave a certain way. So when people are looking for motivation, they're trying to find an external source to make them act and behave a certain way. When it's inspiration, what Martis is talking about, purpose, that is inspiration. It's the reason you exist. It's why you're there. You don't need any external source. I was in a park by myself with no music. That's inspiration. I'm there for a purpose. I don't need people to watch me. I don't need music. It's better with those things, but I don't need that. So what I'd encourage your listeners to do is ZUU can be such a good, we called it in sports, the bridge between gym strength and field or gym and court strength. ZUU was the bridge. I would also say it's also an entry point to get into weights. I think weights is fantastic for people to do. But if you're intimidated by it, get in touch with your body first, right, Martis? You know how you've got to teach people how to squat properly, how to do... When people are in touch with their body by just doing bodyweight movements, normally they need less coaching, right, Martis? Because they understand how their body moves, especially when it comes to kids.
And we talk a lot of motivation, but we will always have people who would say discipline. Of course, it goes together.
Sure.
Because without discipline, you wouldn't have any results. You can't just do one session and then, okay, I'll continue in a month's time and I'm expecting best results.
Yeah, well, that's not discipline, is it? That's lazy.
Yeah. And we talk a lot about respecting others, because this is what we do in sports. If you take professional athlete who is competing, let's say European Championship, World Championship, Olympics, it's the same in life. So do you agree with me that in everyday life, to stay positive, you have to respect each other? Because this is what we are lacking now with social media. If you look, we're hating each other, we are swearing, and it became a norm. So what's your stand about social media now? Do you have to improve and work on ourselves instead of fighting back silly people who are trying to write negative comments?
Oh, it's such a deep topic, Martis. Look, I'll keep it really, really simple. And this is a good illustration. I'm 51, so I grew up in the 70s. When I was growing up, we didn't even have a phone, okay? People say, it's funny, but we didn't have a phone. So think about this story, because a lot of you listening in, you know what I'm talking about. If I wanted to go kick the football with one of my mates, I would have to get on my BMX bike. One of my mates lived 25, say 30 minutes from my house. I grew up in the top of Australia, stinking hot, like super hot. I'd have to ride 30 minutes to his house. People, when I tell them the story, they're like, so what? You rode 30 minutes to kick the football? No, I didn't. I rode 30 minutes to see if he was home. That's first point. Knock on the door. He's not home. I've got to ride 30 minutes home. Sometimes I'd do that 2-3 times a day. That means like 2.5 hours.
Cycling.
2.5 hours to kick a football? No. 2.5 hours invested into a friendship. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Time, energy, effort invested into a friendship. Then, yes, as mates, we kick the football. What is it today? No.
Busy.
No.
Gaming.
There's no time, energy, effort. So while we need technology, I'm a huge believer that there's just this toxic effect that is happening on humans. No human touch, no interaction. Can't even look people in the eyes anymore when they're talking to each other. So when I tell that story to people, it really makes them think, man, like... So I say if you want to do something to understand what I'm talking about, I want you this weekend or today, tomorrow, whenever, I want you to go visit a very close family member or friend that you haven't seen in a long time, and I don't want you to tell them you're coming. I just want you to go to their house, and if they open the door, I don't want you to say, I was just in the area. No. I want you to say to them, man, I haven't seen you in ages. I just thought I'd come around and say g'day. Every time I've said that to people, no one's put their hand up to tell me they've done that in the last 12 months. No one. But when I was growing up, we did that all the time. So if you do that to someone, if you do it to someone and say, I was just in the area, it doesn't have the same feeling. But if I just rocked up on Martus's door, flew from Australia, and said, I just came here to see you, it would mean everything to him because it's about him, not me. And that's energy and effort into a friendship. So I love using that illustration, mate, to help people understand that with social media, I agree with everything you've been talking about with social media. Swearing, the things they say, the things they do, the things people can get away with. They wouldn't say that in person, but they think they can say those things online. The bullying that's happening. We won't stop it, Martus. I'm just going to say that now. You won't stop that. The floodgates have been open. But there's less and less of us walking against it, talking a different. And the best we can do is just kind of be beacons, like a lighthouse of truth, of authenticity, whatever you want to call it, where some people go, you know what, that's me. I actually agree with that. And then that's that grassroots where people are spreading it.
But I'm a great believer. We have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And if you get an audience, we can all make an impact at a greater scale, but we have to get that trust to earn respect from people. So same as you're earning respect while training, we have to earn respect at what we do so people could follow us, follow our lead. And I think we can make changes and we are not just beacons, but that's another conversation.
You are making changes. And I'm super proud of you, brother, on what you're doing.
Yeah. So what would be your advice to people who are struggling to prioritize their health over their lifestyle, home commitments, work commitments, and other things what we have to do on a daily basis?
If a doctor tells you got 12 months to live, I guarantee you everything changes. So don't wait for a doctor to tell you those things, okay? Everyone says that same question to me. What do you think it is, Nathan? I'm like, well, if you have that conversation with a doctor or someone, you don't need me to tell you to go train. You training every day. You changing every bad habit you got. You know, I remember years ago I went to a doctor's surgery and I had this little cartoon on the front desk and it said, the secret to giving up smoking is doing it while you're alive. And it just brought the point home. There's so many people out there who procrastinate and all these other things, Martus, and they can be watching this and think, yeah, I've got to. And that's where I'm like, if you just do 10 minutes today, don't overthink it. I need gym clothes on it. Don't. Just get it done like today and just make that routine. The difference between a habit and a routine, habit is something people do on autopilot. Routine will always require energy and effort. Let me ask you a question, Martus. So welcome to the podcast. I'm here talking to Martus. So Martus, when you get ready for the gym, is it a habit where you just pack everything and do it without thinking? Or is it a routine where you've got to plan everything out? You've got to think about the body parts you're training, the workout you're going through, you're visualizing it. So which one is it? Is it a habit or is it a routine?
Habit or a routine? Good question.
Does it require energy and effort from you to do it?
Probably not, but it still takes some planning because not to miss my sessions, I always carry second pair of trainers, second pair of shorts in my car. So it's like a backup plan in case I forget things. But at some point, if I say it's a routine, so it sounds like I am going to work. But if it's a habit, a good habit, so it means it's probably what I like to do. I'm trying to separate things.
I understand, because a lot of times people say we want to make it like a good habit. A habit for most people is if a plumber comes around and turns the water off and you go up to the sink and he says the water's off, and then an hour later you go up to the sink and you just turn it on. That's like a habit. Well, there's not much energy and effort, you just turn it on. But a routine for Martus is he just told me he's got an extra pair of shorts, extra pair of shoes. That just requires energy and effort, like you are thinking about what you're doing. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it makes sense.
A routine done regularly, people say, well, that forms a good habit, which it can.
Exactly.
So what I want to say to people is, too many times they watch social media and they say, make training a habit. But you and I both know when you're starting out, it's a lot of work discipline, all the things we've been talking about, motivation, purpose, all of those things, it's going to require effort. But don't be afraid of that stuff, okay? Don't be afraid of that stuff. You've got to fall in love with that stuff. As hard as it is, you've got to fall in love with the process. I can tell you right now, Martis is in love with the process. Every single day, he won't miss it because he knows just how much benefits, not just physically, mentally, emotionally for him as a man. And he's in love with that process. Am I correct, Martis?
Yes.
He's in love with
100%.
That's where you want to get to. That didn't happen overnight for Martis. It took time, right? You don't wake up and go, well, I'm training every day. I love it. Most people hate it because, I'm going to sweat, it's burn, it's pain. That's okay. The human body is meant to be stressed. Emotionally, mentally, physically. Muscles work. Bones are meant to get denser from like pressure. You bring out the best in yourself by putting yourself into those stressful environments, but you have to fall in love with that process.
And everything what we have precious in life, it takes time. We cannot get it instantly because nowadays people think straight away, I want results tomorrow, day after tomorrow, in a week's time, month's time. So everything what's precious takes time. The good things take time.
Good things take time. And I fail all the time, guys. Look, I'm happy to admit that. I fail all the time as a husband, a father, a man. I fail less. My mistakes are far less. And I fail less than the Nathan, 15 years ago. But that's just part of this journey. And the ability to recover quicker is so much better when you're working on yourself.
So I'll turn the tables now. So that's last speech of your life. Make an impact, make people suffer, give your best advice to people. I want them crying now, watching the end of this podcast, and they start crying just by listening to your speech, to your advice.
Do more of what you love with those you love. But in order to really enjoy that, you have to be working on being the best version of you. And if you know you're not being the best version of you with your man or a woman, the question then is, remember when you point the finger, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. If you go around your life pointing the fingers at other people, I would encourage you to spend some time with yourself in an intense environment. Not enough people do it where they can really get to understand who they are, because the world needs more people who know who they are. I don't know if they'll make you cry, but it's the best I got.
I will do that at home. So thank you, Nathan, for visiting Lithuania for the third time.
Love it.
It's been an honor to talk to you in this podcast. You was an inspiration to me when I was starting my career, and I'm not going to hide that. So this conversation was so easy because I was so deep into what you are saying. I understand your concept, and I hope that people will understand and find the ZUU. And I hope you all the best, and I'm 100% sure this is not the last trip to Lithuania, and I'll be seeing you not just in Lithuania, but in other countries as well. So thank you one more time, and have a great holiday.
You're very welcome. And I love you, mate, like a brother. There's not many people I meet. There's not many people I meet like Martis, where I will go and visit him. Even if we're not working, I'll just come and visit Martis. Love you like a brother. Your family, you've always treated me amazing. My wife got to meet you last night for the first time. The community you've created here in Copper Gym is amazing. And I'm not saying this for marketing or anything like that. If you want to experience something that only exists with salt of the earth people, listen to that, salt of the earth people. If you want an experience where you might find hard to explain to others, which means it's like a spiritual experience, just this really enriching experience, come down and meet Martis and the community. I wouldn't even say it's like a community down here at Copper Gym. And I love being here, brother.
So with this note, I'll say thank you one more time, and I'll see you and our listeners on the next podcast.
Yes, sir.